Welcome to the Razors Inc. podcast with your host, Jonathan Farini. Disaster movies. Movies about disasters, both natural and man-made, are almost as old as film itself. One of the earliest goes all the way back to 1901's Fire. But if you're of a certain age, you might recall a sort of golden age of disaster movies, namely the 70s, which brought us Airport, The Hindenburg, The Poseidon Adventure, Earthquake, and others, often boasting an all-star cast and subsequently big box office. So pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and hear Jonathan's take on movies, television, and today, arguably the greatest of those 70s disaster films. Here's your host, Jonathan Farini.
The Towering Inferno, 1974. I was 16 when I saw this film, and I've seen it a handful of times since. I'm producing this podcast because I can make some observations about the film you might find interesting. It was released by two studios, 20th Century Fox and Warner Brothers, who had each purchased two competing books about fires and glass tower buildings. So they joined forces and split the budget for the Towering Inferno, 50% each. The budget, if the report is correct, was $14 million. Cheap by today's standards, but also seems inexpensive by early 70s standards, given the cast and special effects. Never trust any numbers you see. It was made at Fox, who got North American distribution rights, and Warner Brothers, who got the worldwide distribution rights. It's produced by Irwin Allen, a disaster film producer and writer. His formula was to create a disaster, sprinkle it with stars creating drama and pathos. One of his films included The Poseidon Adventure in '72, which was written by Sterling Silliphant, who, coincidentally, wrote the screenplay for The Towering Inferno. Please check out Sterling Silliphant, who was a prolific writer and creator. If you want to spend almost 3 hours with big stars and an action-adventure film with wonderful special effects, Paul Newman and Steve McQueen showcasing their acting and physical talents, the San Francisco skyline of the 70s. Yeah, you can see the Transamerica building. It's a good film for first-time viewers, and those of you returning to see it with mature eyes. Speaking of writing, I'll share with you that there is a lot of the movie Bullitt in this film. First, Steve McQueen plays a San Francisco Fire Department battalion chief named Michael O'Halloran, rather than Frank Bullitt, a San Francisco police detective.
Architects. Yeah, it's all our fault. Now you know there's no sure way for us to fight a fire at anything over the 7th floor. But you guys just keep building them as high as you can.
Hey, are you here to take me on or the fire?
2. The location takes place in San Francisco. 3. Don Gordon, the actor, plays Cappy, a fire captain, instead of Detective Delgetti in Bullitt.
What do we got here, Cappy?
Fire started, 81st floor, storage room. This is a bad one. Smoke is so thick we can't tell how far it spread.
4th, Robert Vaughn plays Senator Gary Parker in The Towering Inferno, as opposed to Walter Chalmers in Bullitt. 5th, O.J. Simpson plays a critical role as the security supervisor who notices the early warnings of fire.
Say, Bill, tune in the main utility room.
Okay.
Something screwed up. The sensor didn't trip the fire department alarm.
Why should it? You can see for yourself. There's no fire.
Well, the sensor indicates there is. Plus, Wes just called. He said they're having wiring problems down there. You better stay with him.
I'm reminded of the young medical resident played by George Stanford Brown, Dr. Willard. Both in awkward positions threading the needle within a corporate high-rise and medical center, respectively. Just saying. One of the maxims of this podcast is nothing happens in film by accident. Weaving previously successful actors within a previously successful film with different costumes mitigates risk and ensures success. I can hear the studio suits telling Sterling, put in a lot of that bullet film into the script. If it worked once, it'll work again. The two biggest male stars in the world agreed to play together in this film. Steve was coming off of Papillon in 73, and Paul was coming off of The Sting in 73. Steve was known as a difficult actor by many good fellow actors I trust, so I'm certain getting top billing was huge for him and his management. Conversely, Paul didn't carry around any negative reviews from fellow cast I've read about, but I'm sure he and his management cared about billing as well. Back to writing. Sterling has O'Halloran, McQueen, show up at about the 40-minute mark in the movie, or page 40 within the script, and the movie takes off. It's Steve's movie, and every frame with him, like Bullet, is magic. Please understand, I adore Paul Newman and followed his entire career. I call him the most fortunate actor of a generation because of the great writers whose characters he played. But The Towering Inferno wasn't one such film. Paul's philanthropy continues to remind us of his greatness. O'Halloran, McQueen, is confronted by Holden's character, who doesn't want the cocktail reception, interrupted.
Everything under control?
Got to move all these people out of here.
Oh, now, just how bad is it?
It's a fire, mister, and all fires are bad.
Well, I don't believe that you're familiar with the many modern safety systems we have designed into this building. We've got them all.
All right, it's your building, but it's our fire. Now, let's get these people the hell out of here.
Now, I don't think you're listening, Chief. There's no way for a fire on 81 to reach up here, not in this building.
Okay, I'll do it.
Hold it. The mayor's out there. Do you want me to pull rank on you?
When there's a fire, I outrank everybody here.
Reminds me of Bullett's remark to Chalmers, you work your side of the street and I'll work mine. Or in the Thomas Crown affair to the buyers of his building assembled in the boardroom, you overpaid. That's Steve McQueen energy, people. You can't learn it. You're born with it. Note to writers, you got to hook them early, just like Sterling at page 40. How do you handle this credit situation of two mega stars, budding filmmakers? Well, it's a linear billing in the final credits, with Steve to the left and Paul to the right, but elevated. When I see it, Paul got top billing. Think about any other methods of handling the billing in the credits. I see it as an algebraic equation where you manipulate variables and solve for X or Y. I think they achieve the only satisfactory solution in my manipulation of the Rubik's Cube of titles. Question, budding filmmakers. Could you imagine McQueen and Newman swapping roles? Think about it. I don't see Steve playing the architect any more than I saw him playing Tommy Crown in the Thomas Crown Affair. See my podcast about movies, television, and theater in 1968, or my podcast, Blob to Bullet. In a nutshell, the film's about a fire that breaks out inside the world's tallest skyscraper, with apartments beginning on the 81st floor and rising up to the 138th floor. The developer is the actor William Holden, who plays James Duncan. We discover his son-in-law, Roger Simmons, played by Richard Chamberlain, cut $2 million in corners as the electrical subcontractor, and this results in electrical short circuits.
To what do we owe the pleasure?
Callahan was testing a backup generator. There was a power surge and a systems failure.
How can that be?
It can't be, theoretically. Unless you've been screwing around with the electrical specifications.
That's being rather blunt, isn't it?
You betcha.
Then you'll understand my being equally blunt. What the hell business is it of yours, anyway?
Well, I'm just wondering what kind of kickbacks were involved.
I don't have to take crap from you.
Now listen. We had an electrical flare-up in the main utility room. It looked to me like some of that wiring wasn't exactly what I asked for.
Every piece of wire I put in that building is strictly up to code, inspected and approved.
The code's not enough for that building. And you know it. That's why I asked for installations that were way, way above standard.
Buddy, you live in a dream world. I deal in realities.
The film takes us through the resulting fire. Paul Newman is the architect of the project, and his fiancée is played by Faye Dunaway.
See, Doug, I want the kind of life you're talking about. I want that. And I want a place where our kids can run around and grow and be free.
Right.
I want this job. I've wanted it for 5 years. I've worked for it for 5 years. Now suddenly it's there. See, I have ideas, Doug. I can do something with it, something that hasn't been done before. I guess I want both, and I can't have both, can I?
She had just starred in Chinatown, released in June of 1974, and Towering Inferno was released in December of 74. Please take note that William Holden and Faye Dunaway would go on to star in Network in 1976. Faye won the Oscar for Best Actress. More casting tidbits. I call the addition of these three actors seasoning, dropped into the film like a stew, not by accident, but to add zest and bring eyeballs into the theater. Fred Astaire shows up in a small role to play a con man who flirts with a wealthy resident and sell her phony stock certificates.
You must miss your villa. Well, yes and no. It gets rather dull in the south of France. It really does. I mean, nothing but swimming and yachting, partying, and all that sort of thing. And believe it or not, they fight over the few eligible bachelors. Even such old scraps as I.
No false humility, please.
Shall we? I decided to come back to the reality of San Francisco to regain my perspective and my humility and spend more time at the one thing in this world that I'm really good at, the stock market.
Monte Carlo's loss is San Francisco's gain.
Thank you. Do you believe in destiny?
I believe in all good things.
There must be a reason for my coming back home. Meeting you.
They fall in love. Fred doesn't dance, although a small dance bit inside the cocktail reception with his mark, Mrs. Mueller, would have been beautiful and was a missed opportunity by the director. Fred's elderly but lovable, but the character really serves no purpose except box office draw, in my opinion. O.J. Simpson plays the chief security guard, Harry Jernigan. O.J. was still playing in the NFL, but I had seen him in a Dragnet episode and a movie called The Klansman with Lee Marvin and Richard Burton, released in October of 74. He'd begin his Hertz commercials in 1975. O.J. was a popular crossover figure with audiences, and I believe he was the only black actor in this film except for another firefighter. I'm certain the film benefited from his crossover appeal. O.J. had a good role in this film and performs in a heroic rescue of a deaf woman and her children. He returns at the end of the film with Fred and presents him with the cat of his beloved who perished inside the fire. It's a beautiful scene between two athletes, old and young, different playing fields, that's all. Look for Gregory Sierra, who plays a bartender we meet at the cocktail reception. He has a few lines with Holden regarding a crate of very expensive champagne. He played the escaped prisoner in Papillon, 1973.
I want you to meet Senator Parker.
Carlos, great pleasure. It's a great honor, Senator.
Now show him what you've been hiding back there.
Yes, sir. Oh.
29. That's all you're going to drink tonight.
A whole case?
Well, what you don't drink, we'll ship the rest back to Washington. Open the bottle, will you?
Yes, sir.
How did you ever come by a whole case? Come on, Jim.
It's nothing.
All roles lead to Rome actors, and played a Jewish character named Paul Benjamin in a very tense episode of All in the Family in 1973. I remember him fondly showing up in the Sanford and Sons television series. He began his career with the National Shakespeare Company in 1967. We lost him in 2021. I didn't see any Latino actors in The Towering Inferno, but his short bits in this film really allowed his heart and lightness of life to shine. The building is a protagonist. Check out the set designs, particularly the staircases, elevator shafts, electrical rooms, and service areas where the fire is raging and our characters must perform. Admire the special effects or lack of it, meaning raging fires, falling equipment, perilous situations, all without the need for CGI. I was reminded of the great Universal television series Emergency, which had great first responder special effects without electronic or computer gimmickry. I can tell all of the cast worked hard, got sweaty, tired, and were treated for bumps and bruises. It's that realistic. How about working with floodwaters raging through the set? Does life imitate art? The final scenes include William Holding looking up at the smoldering building and saying, "Pray I can stop it from happening again." Newman remarks,
I don't know. Maybe they just ought to leave it the way it is. Kind of shrine to all the bullshit in the world. You know, we were lucky tonight. Body count's less than 200.
You know, one of these days, you're gonna kill 10,000 in one of these fire traps. And I'm gonna keep eating smoke and bringing out bodies until somebody asks us how to build them. Okay, I'm asking. You know where to reach me. So long, architect.
The Towering Inferno was prophetic in light of the terrible fire and destruction of the World Trade Center and catastrophes everywhere. Today in San Francisco, there's a beautiful, very tall, luxury high-rise condo which has been the subject of litigation and press regarding negligent construction or mass transportation provocations. I won't name it, but you can learn about it with a search. Although fire alert and suppression systems have evolved since the Towering Inferno, California is awaiting the big one, the earthquake, which will have devastating effects on high-rise buildings and others. The admonishments of the Towering Inferno's conclusion, like most history, suggests those who aren't aware of history are condemned to repeat it. Let's thank the technical advisors on the Towering Inferno, including the San Francisco and Los Angeles fire departments. And when watching this film, you are witness to their bravery, and we remain grateful for their service. Until I see you next time, please leave behind a small footprint, and class is dismissed.
And that cast of Newman, McQueen, Dunaway, Chamberlain, Holden, it still boggles the mind. You've been listening to the Razors Inc. podcast with Jonathan Farini. Be sure to check out Jonathan's collection of fiction at jonathanfarini.com. There you'll find everything from drama to romance, something for every reader, including his short story, Whispers from the Chamber, published by the Choya Needles Arts and Literary Library, who also published Jonathan's collection of short stories, Hearts Without Sleeves, available at Amazon. That's jonathanfarini.com, Farini with 2 R's, 1 N. Or drop an email to razorsincpodcast@gmail.com.